All right, Battletech fans, so here we are. We're talking about the historic sale of all of the Battledroids miniatures that just happened on eBay, with the specific instance of the Battledroid Marauder being kind of the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk about here today. And I have with us our special guest, our seller. This is John. Say hello to the folks at home.
Hello, and may the force be with you.
All right. So I understand you got a pretty good and interesting story about these miniatures.
Yeah, I do some selling on eBay and Amazon, and I have a couple clients that I sell on consignment for. And I got a call from one of them out of the blue one Monday afternoon saying, "Hey, I have this thing. I need your help tomorrow. Can you make it?" And so I kind of rearranged my schedule, and I was able to go. And what it turned out was one of his friends had passed away, and the people who were in charge of the apartment needed his stuff out. There was no time, there was no question about it. So we got to the apartment, and there's a bunch of boxes that have already been done, but my client had a bad leg, so he wasn't able to bring anything down. So we get there and we just start grabbing boxes and going down, and this is just all books and stuff. So then find out after we start cleaning the living room out, there's a whole back room of stuff. And I go in the back there and I start looking around, and it's a mess. Everything's in disarray. But I start scanning, and in the back corner, there's a desk with some metal holders and paint trays and stuff like that. And then I see a couple of Battletech figures sitting there. And I'm like, hey, those are cool. I'm a Star Wars guy. I played Battletech back in the day. I'm not a huge Battletech geek, but I'm very familiar with it. And I was like, all right, this stuff is cool.
Sure.
So, and they were all loose and painted. And I start grabbing them and make a trip out, come back, and I find a box with blister packs. And I'm like, oh, even cooler. Blister packs of this stuff. And at this point, I have no idea what I'm grabbing, but it was, grab what you can. We had like 2 hours there, and that was it. So in all the shuffle, grab a couple boxes of stuff, get out, get back, start going through it and cataloging it. And I realized that I have Battledroids and Battletech, the black and orange blister packs. And so I just start going through and I'm doing a little bit of research on them. And I realized that they're kind of interesting pieces. I had some when I was growing up. I still have a couple that are in the midst of being painted since 1990 or so.
Right.
I'll get to them eventually. And so then I start seeing some of the recent sales on eBay and stuff for the black and orange, but I'm having a lot of trouble with the Battledroid stuff. And there's just not a lot of information out there on them. I found the one of the wikis, Lost Wikis, I think it's called, Lost Minis, and I was able to understand that these were the predecessor to the Battletech ones.
Right.
And so I decided, okay, I'm going to put the black and orange ones out there and kind of see what happens with those. And I got a couple of hits on those, and I started talking to some of the guys that were buying them. I'm like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm putting these Battledroids up for sale, and the interest in them was just huge. And at that point I was like, okay, I better do a little bit more research here.
Sure.
So I have a buddy who is super into Battletech, and I hit him up and I'm like, hey man, can you introduce me in this group or something? I'm a little out of my element here. If it was Star Wars, I would know. I would know I had the blue snaggletooth. I would know that I had the yak face. I had no idea about these Battledroids.
Okay.
And so he ended up getting me into the group that he was in, and I actually started to chat up with one of the guys, and he gave me a lot of insight into the whole Battledroid thing and what we were actually looking at. So I put them all up for auction, and there was a little bit of action on them, and then they just started the Marauder. The Marauder. I don't understand personally. I understand the concept behind the Marauder being so rare, but it was just phenomenal to watch it. It was the fighting over it. And when I was talking to my client about this last night, I told him that I was going to be doing this interview, and I told him that it was kind of fitting because the original owner of this his friend, was huge into the Battletech scene. He and his
Sure.
brother were huge up in Milwaukee. They played Battletech for 10, 15 years. It got to the point where they were so well known they weren't allowed to play on the same team together.
Oh boy.
Because they were so good, so they always
Sure.
had to fight against each other.
Right.
They were never allowed to gang up on other people. That's how notorious they became up in the Milwaukee area. So I was talking to him about it, and I said, it's really kind of fitting that his treasured pieces, his collection, are being fought over at the very
sure.
end. Like the last thing of his involvement in these is them being fought over tooth and nail. So he appreciated that, and I think that overall it was just a wonderful experience all around.
So how well would you say you knew the original owner of the minis? Relatively well, or
in passing, I know that he was a huge Battletech geek. I talked to him a couple times. He was kind of an older generation than me, so he was not really like somebody that I hung out with, but I knew him through my client. So I knew him pretty well. He was a big old geek himself.
Sure.
Loved the game. One of the really, I mean, it was a bad situation overall, but one of the very interesting things about going into that room was seeing how much he loved what he did.
Sure.
Just the passion behind the Battletech, the other geek stuff. I mean, it was really like, something that I absolutely appreciated, and I hope that I'm like that, when I'm
Right.
Retired and just puttering around and still just working on the stuff that I love, like he obviously did.
So, okay, the client that you're selling this stuff for, what was their reaction to the whole thing?
So there's a bunch of different things that we're working through. The Battletech stuff was actually kind of an add-on. Like I was interested in them personally, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna, maybe hang on to these, and I'll come up with a fair number on these and stuff. But so he didn't even really know that they were up for auction, and I didn't tell him until last night what they ended up going for. I called him up out of the blue. I'm like, hey, remember those miniatures? He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 18 of them just sold. And he's like, yeah. And then I told him the number that the grand total, and he just laughed. He started laughing, and and then we started reminiscing about his friend's love for the game and everything. He's like, and that's when the whole conversation about the passion behind it, and the last fight over the mechs. He definitely appreciated the monetary value, but also just the whole buzz behind it, the whole excitement behind it, just the rarity of what had been found.
So, okay, going into this auction, you said you didn't really know a whole heck of a lot about what was going on there, but when you set these things up and you put these things up for bid, did you have any kind of expectation whatsoever as to how this would go?
I like my expectation was on the Behemoth. Like I had done enough research to understand that the Behemoth was a very sought after piece, and that went for I can't remember off the top of my head, over 300.
Yes.
It might have pushed 400. So I thought that was going to be the crowning piece. I thought that was going to be the exciting one, and all the others would be kind of like, okay, yeah, this is neat. I was hoping for 100 a piece on those, and they very well cleared those.
Sure.
But I was really just expecting the Behemoth to kind of skyrocket. The Warhammer did extremely well. The first thing that I put up for sale out of this whole Battletech collection was a set of 7 miniatures that were already painted. They were in a dark gray scheme with kind of like white camo style stuff. And when I posted that up, I posted it for 200. Buy it now. That I always try to overprice stuff so that I don't undersell it, but also just kind of gauge how it's going. And I posted for 225, and people were watching it. Like it was a Marauder, it was a Warhammer, it was a Battlemaster, an Atlas. So these were decent older mechs. And I finally sold them to a guy for 200, and that's when I started talking about the Battledroids. I was like, oh hey, and by the way, and that's when I realized that the interest was there. Going into the last couple minutes, it had already been bid up to, I think, 600, 650, somewhere in that range, and that's where I was expecting it to end. I was happy once it cleared 500, and then it got up to 6, and I was sitting there talking to my wife about it, and we were watching it, and I'm like, I'm going to be optimistic here, and I'm going to say it clears 1,000. And she goes, no way. It'll hit 800.
Right?
It'll maybe hit 800. And, with eBay, you can watch as the auction ends, and it's at 650, and then all of a sudden it jumps to 8, and then in the last second, like you said, boom, and we were both just like, what?
Wow, right? That just happened.
Wow. Yeah, so if this auction far exceeded my expectations. It was just so much fun watching it go and just seeing kind of how excited the community was about it. I've been poking around in the Battletech groups online, and so I was aware that there was discussion going on about these. So it was really fun. As you can probably tell, I'm more of a Star Wars guy myself.
Sure.
And I'm kind of an outsider to the Battletech community, but it's always super fun for me seeing people in other groups excited about what they love. Like, that to me is the heads and tails of everything that I do. So that was super exciting.
So to close, I want to get your opinion as a Star Wars collector. See, I'm not super educated on that, but I know how passionate those guys are and how passionate they get about that hobby. So this will definitely be a cool question for you. I've seen a lot of folks on the boards going, oh, well, $1,200 for one miniature. Well, I sure hope they open it and paint it, and I'm just like, what do you hope? Yeah, exactly. I had the same exact reaction. What do you hope that the buyers will do with these pieces?
On the Marauder, I am pretty sure from my conversations with the buyer that this is going in a treasured spot in his display. I don't think he's gonna rip it open and paint it, and I really don't think that's gonna happen. Some of the other ones, I know that two of the buyers were definitely buying for their collection to add to their existing collection of blisters. So I don't think that any of these Battledroids are going to get opened up. I really don't think that the people who bought these are in that habit of ripping them open just to paint them. Like, there are enough versions out there where they can get an open one if they wanted to. So I think these are going to the hands of collectors for the most part. I just did want to point out that these are part of my permanent display. I've got my my Robotech. I actually just picked up these two, so I'm able to do the whole progression. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Oh, very cool. I love it.
So I've got my Battletech in all three modes, and then right there, I got my Warhammer. It wasn't called a Warhammer by Robotech, but that's what I call it because at the end of the day, I really do love the Battletech scene. I never really got into playing it at all, but I've got the box set Battletech, and that Warhammer is my hands down favorite. I don't know if you checked out my auctions or not.
I got this guy handy.
Excellent, very nice. I priced the Warhammer black and orange for like $120 because I don't want to sell it. I have to sell it, but I don't want to sell it, so I priced it way the heck up because that's my favorite piece.
Well, all right, John, I sure appreciate you joining us here on Zoom to talk about this historic sale and talk about a little bit of the provenance that goes behind the miniatures. Thank you very much for that. We're going to have John here, or excuse me, not John, James. We're going to have James here in just a second that's going to talk about some of the history behind the miniatures insofar as their release schedule and stuff. So I'll keep you updated on that if you want to hear it and you want to watch the video when it's done.
Oh, absolutely.
But, sweet. Thank you so much for joining us, brother. I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
You take care of yourself, sir.
You too.
All right, so we're back. This time our special guest at this time is James. Now, James, I understand that you were in the bidding on this auction for the Marauder, and you were in the bidding up to $1,200. Is that correct?
I was.
And as I've seen some Facebook posts, you were willing to go as far as $1,500, right?
Yes, but I only had 2 seconds left, so that didn't happen.
I understand that you have quite an interesting story, not just where it relates to these miniatures that were sold, but to Battletech itself. As I understand it, you've been a fan of Battletech, not just since it was called Battledroids, but before the game was even available on store shelves.
That is correct. I actually ordered the very first miniatures when they were only on pre-order.
And how were you able to do that?
Rel Partha magazine, and I've been with them since the fantasy line started for D&D.
So you've been going at this for, I want to say
Very long time.
almost longer, than it's been around, but, basically since the very first start, where it was just kind of a concept at that point.
When it first started, the box set, there weren't even miniatures out yet. It was just the 2 little models that came in it, which came from TCI.
Right.
And I was in the military at that time, and a bunch of us got it, and we were actually quite underwhelmed by the box set because everything was just thin paper, and it's like, well, this isn't much. But then we had a poster that showed up, and I was in Germany at the time, and it was a promotional poster for Battledroids with actual metal miniatures, lead miniatures.
Oh, okay.
And the poster had the Fire Bee on it. And we saw that, so I was like, all right, time to dig out the Rel Partha catalog. And there were 8 miniatures made available for pre-order. And I pre-ordered all of them.
As I was just saying a second ago, you were in the bidding on this particular Marauder, and you were in the bidding up to $1,200. So kind of what I want to talk about is, what is it about this particular item that would make you be personally willing to spend that kind of money to have it?
It goes all the way back to ordering those first miniatures as pre-orders. It was 8 of them, and when they were actually released to stores, they added 3 more, including the Fire Bee.
Okay.
And at that point, the Flea and the Archer got added, making it 11 total. But before any more miniatures actually got released to stores, George Lucas flew in and said, you can't use droid.
Right.
And the winter line got pulled, and there were quite a few. If you look at it, there's 18 out there right now that are in Battledroid packets. And a lot of them got ordered at stores, little tiny stores and stuff on pre-orders, and that's how a bunch of them got out into the market.
Okay.
And some of them are easier to find than others. The Marauder is definitely not it. I've never seen it in the Battledroid packet before.
You've never seen one period, or just the oval-based one?
I have one oval-based one out of packet.
Okay, because I don't know, there's some viewers that might not actually understand that there are 2 different Battledroid Marauders, one that comes on an oval base and one that comes on a hex base. The oval-based one being much more rare than the hex-based one. But speaking of rarity, as I understand, you have a comprehensive list of the releases of these miniatures, and a lot of the history behind how those came to be out on the market in store shelves and things like that. So can you tell us just a little bit about that?
I've always kept real good track. It's an OCD gamer thing, my friends call it.
Sure.
But Rel Partha had this habit of, when they'd cancel a miniature, they'd reuse that number.
Okay.
So the history just disappears, and I don't know if that continued with Iron Wind Metals or not, but I think it did. And there's a lot of miniatures got canceled and replaced, and numbers have been used for 4 and 5 different miniatures. But my list, every time a new catalog came out, I added it to my list. So I have like a 40-page Excel document with everything Battletech in it.
Oh, wow.
And it's broken down: mechs, books, resources, magazines, and even go so far to extend into the not FASA produced stuff, things that were made by like fan magazines, things like that.
Okay.
And because I kept track per every release, I have the release, like let's take the Behemoth, for example.
Okay.
People call the Behemoth the super rarest mech ever.
Right.
It's not. Right. It's rare in the Battledroid packet because it never got released in the store that way. It only really made it out there as pre-order. But it actually made it through 3 years in the orange-backed packet. And in '87, that's also when Raphael started carrying it, and when Minifig started carrying it for European. So it's actually out there quite a bit. But the Marauder, that didn't happen. The Marauder, especially the oval base, because it immediately got replaced with the hex base because it just didn't look right. It looked funny.
Right.
And the base was really long.
And the scale on those was kind of weird. I noticed the Archer was, I want to say, almost half the size of what it would end up being when it was labeled as Battletech, because I bought one originally for a Black Widow company project, and then I sat it next to my 2 Archers, and I'm going, this one is way smaller than the other one.
Well, originally, what everybody considers the bombardier.
Yeah.
That was the original Archer in the Battledroid packet.
Oh, see, I did not know that.
And it changed. Was it 1, 2, 3? It was 3 releases later. They created the Archer, and the original one got relabeled the Bombardier.
Huh.
And then that
That's
one,
news to me.
exactly like you said, the very first release when it became the actual Archer, was really small. So that only lasted for just one release, and they immediately remade it a little bit bigger. So those little tiny Archers are actually kind of rare.
I have one out of blister. It's just kind of sitting in my mini box because I didn't realize what it was. I bought it because it was Battledroids, and I'm like, oh boy, I want that. And then I sat it next to this other Archer, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, no, that scales off. And it's the same. That's the reason why I came to be in possession of a Battledroids Marauder, a hex-based one, because I was like, oh, I want that too. I think I paid $85 for it, but it was on a blue card, and I opened it because I wanted to, play with it, and then I sat it next to a regular Marauder, one of the ones that was later, and I'm like, oh, well, here we go with this. This thing is huge, like compared to the size.
Yeah,
so,
I love the huge original ones.
yeah, it's pretty interesting, and the Warhammer as well. If you look at the Battledroids Warhammer, the Battledroids Rifleman, they look so different than the ones that came after that. And I think it's funny.
Well, those particular 3 actually have their own story, because the original Marauder, the original Warhammer, and the original Rifleman were not sculpted by Rail Partha. They were sculpted by GHQ.
Okay.
That was their concept model to say, hey, we can make mechs. But you look at the Warhammer Rifleman and say, yes, they're my favorites, but honestly, the detail on them's horrible. Back then, GHQ's miniatures weren't as good as they are now. I mean, I love their miniatures, and I use them even for Battletech.
Sure.
But that's why those miniatures changed so quickly into the ones that everybody recognizes as the Warhammer and the Rifleman and stuff.
Having seen the history of Battletech, from the start to its current state, my question is, how do you feel about where the game is going versus where the game has been?
How controversial can I be with that answer?
Brother, this is Battletalk, Daddy. You just get as controversial as you want.
Okay, we won't talk about the bad side or the good side of this, but there was a Robotech miniature line a few years back. Big Kickstarter.
Yep.
Went bad, and that's as far as we'll go. But when that Kickstarter came out, I took a loan out at my bank, because at that point in Battletech, I thought it was going to die. I mean, Battletech was not doing good in 2012, 2013.
I remember this, yes.
So I went all out on that. I spent over $2,000 on that Kickstarter.
Hot dog.
And the reason why was not because I wanted to play Robotech. It's because, well, this is what all the original Unscenes were based off of. So
sure.
I wanted it. And now I've got, 96 Wasp and 96 Stingers and 48 Warhammers and 48 Riflemans.
Right.
Believe me, they're not all built, because those things take forever.
Well, yeah, I actually had somebody give me some of them, and I was like, my God, I need these little needle-nosed tweezers to put these guys together. And I was like, no, that's all right. I'll stick with the old Unseen metal ones if that's what I want.
Yeah, I've got cases of the Robotech ones. That leads up to, all of a sudden, here's the Clan Invasion Kickstarter for Battletech.
Oh, okay.
I still spent $2,500.
I think 600 is what I did. Maybe
if it would have been a normal day for me, I would have been the first person to go full Kerensky. I just couldn't at that point.
Sure.
And if I had known that was going to happen, I would have never did the Robotech thing, because that would have been $2,500 more I could spend.
Right.
But now, I mean, this Kickstarter has gotten the game out there, and people are excited again. You can't even pre-order this stuff fast enough on sites. I mean,
oh, yeah.
There's 20 different places out there where you can log in to try to get one of these. It's like we just got 20 in today, and if you didn't see it the minute they put it up for sale, you miss it.
Yeah, it sold out in an hour, tops.
I mean, I was at the point where I thought Battletech was a dying game, and now it's, like you said, it's a renaissance for the game. If
you had actually won this Marauder that you were trying to get, would that have filled a critical gap in your collection?
It is, as of right now, the only verified miniature in Battledroids package I don't have. There is one that I can't verify, but goes back to the same 3 we talked about earlier, the Warhammer, the Rifleman, and the Marauder. were all sculpted together, released together. The Warhammer made it, the Marauder made it, the Rifleman had to make it. I've never seen one. I don't know anybody who has. So you can put it out there on this video. If somebody can show me that and is willing to split with it, I've got $1,500 to spend.
Yeah, that's right, because you didn't put it down on the Marauder, so you're like, hey, I got it here.
When something new comes out for Battletech, I buy 5.
Right.
4 of them to open so I can have a whole lance and 1 for my collection. Even the box sets, I have 5 Game of Armored Combats, 5 Clan Invasion. That's how I buy Battletech.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and I have every miniature that's out there. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no doubt.
And I have to have at least 4 for lances and 5 for stars. So I mean,
Right.
I've got so many miniatures, it's crazy. If I like a game, I have to have everything so that it lives on through me.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And my kids, they call my place the gamer's library. Because it doesn't matter if you're in the kitchen, I guarantee you the shelves have games on them because they don't fit anywhere else.
Right.
It's like my china cabinet, there's no china in my china cabinet, there's games.
Here. So, okay, here's kind of what I want to know, and this is the impetus for me wanting to do these interviews, was when I was watching these bids just go sky high, and several of us, as I'm sure you know, were sitting around just kind of buzzing about the whole thing, talking with one another. What does Battletech itself mean to you that would make you say, okay, I'm willing to drop serious coin on all of this stuff?
I got into it when I was in the military. It was one of my first games, other than D&D in high school. This was my first real game. And it's based on real-world military history and the future of that. I mean, if you like tanks, it's got tanks. But then you get walking tanks. I mean, how can you go wrong? All my stuff, I mean, I was in the military 14 years. And all of my Battletech stuff, it got used. And if it was from the collection and stayed in its packets, it still had to travel with me. They went to Germany, they went to England, they went to Greenland, they went to 15 different states in the US, and they're all pretty worn out. And I'd say, honestly, if I would have won all those auctions Sunday, all my old ones would have came out of the packets.
Yeah,
because the packets are, I mean, they're in the package, so I won't take them out until I can replace them. But they're in pretty bad shape. Some of them are. I think my collection is probably still one of the most complete ones you would see out there. And I was eventually planning to open a gaming club, not just for Battletech, but basically like they would have a store and it would have a gaming area that was just tables for people to walk in. There'd be terrain on all of them. You could sit down and play, and everybody would have membership. They'd have a locker to keep stuff in. And that's where I plan to be when I retire.
That would be so cool. I would be totally down.
And that's my retirement plan. I saw the auctions go up Sunday, and I'm like, you know what? I've got the money, and these things all look like they've been very well taken care of. So I went in thinking, all right, the typical ones go for $70 on eBay. That's a good price for them. And some of the ones like the Behemoth, you can see that, especially in the packet, go for $400 or $500 easily. So I'm like, all right, I'm going in and I'm going to bid 60% higher than the average price I see everything go for. So all those common ones, my starting bids was $125. I didn't win hardly any of them. They all went for $140, $150. I mean, it was shocking. And I did win my favorite one, which was the Warhammer. So I do get to replace my old Warhammer packet. So I was excited, but it cost me $413.
Damn.
A lot higher than I expected. But that one I was more than willing because I already knew that one was one of the rarer ones. And then got to the Marauder, and because I knew the history, and it's like, well, you know what? The oval-based Marauder might only exist in this packet. I honestly couldn't tell you if it ever made it into the orange packet because I don't have one in package. I know when it came out, I know when it was released, but there was a lot of gray area between that Battledroid and the orange packet. So I saw that one, I'm like, all right, I've seen a lot of mechs go for $500, even higher, and this one's going to definitely go for $800 because it's an oval-based Marauder. And I'm thinking, so nobody would ever pay $1,000 for a little 2-inch tall miniature. I'm bidding $1,200.
Sure.
That's how I thought about this. I went in very confident for all of them. And on that one, I'm thinking, like, $1,200, people would be nuts to do $1,000. So I'm going 12.
Right.
And then it's like, I bid it, and a few seconds later, boom, it's at 1225. I was like, no! And I tried really fast to put in 1500.
Yeah.
And but there was 2 seconds left at that point. It didn't happen. The only thing that worries me is people are going to think, oh, a Marauder is worth a fortune now, and they're going to pull one that's not in the packet out and think, I'm getting $800 for my Warhammer out of the packet, or my Marauder out of the packet. And I'll tell you right now, even the oval based, you're not getting much more than $100 out of me if it's not in the packet. I don't need one.
Right.
But because the hype on these auctions was so crazy, I mean, there's 20 different Battletech sites out there all talking about this auction. So, I mean, it probably will affect the prices of them a little bit. But this was far and beyond the average price, so it's not standard. It's one of those things like, if the average is 70, can you get one for 40 or 50 in the packet? Yes, you can. I've gotten a couple. But can they go over that? Yes, they can. They don't normally go this much over, though. Lance packs. I mean, even the history of Lance packs, I don't think people even have the slightest idea where Lance packs started. And... Okay. For example, I mean, everybody remembers the original Lance packs, the ones that go for $150 and stuff now on eBay.
Right.
The heavy, the assault, the light, the medium. Those actually started in the Rail Partha catalog for the Fox's Teeth, the Grey Death Legion, Wolf Dragoons, the Black Widow, and Snords Irregulars. And they offered them based on the actual books that were out, the first ones that came out like that.
Oh, wow.
And when they went to the actual boxed packs that you could buy, that's where they came from. But you could order from Rail Partha. It's like, I want the Black Widow company, and you could order that.
Oh wow! See, it took me a while to piece those together.
Yep, and I mean, even the original Cranston Snords Irregulars, not Roundas, but Cranston Snords was one of the first ones from way back then. That was one you could just pull out the sheet and pre-order Cranston Snords Irregulars, and they'd send you the company. And that's you could order it by full company, or you could order it by lances, because they were all 3 lances. And if you remember those books, you flip them to the back, and they showed you the 3 lances on the back of the books.
Right. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And all of those books, they made those. Rail Partha actually put them together that way.
Well, James, I greatly appreciate your time. I'm glad you came on the show here and had this talk with us. I definitely learned a little bit, and I hope the viewers at home will have learned something from it too. I greatly appreciate your time, sir, and I'll let you go, but this has been wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You take care of yourself, sir.
Yep, you too.
All right, everybody, and we are back with our third and final guest at this time, one of our sponsors here on Battlebound from Fortress Miniatures and Games. It's Robert Ash. Say hello, everybody.
Hey.
All right. So, as I understand it, you are one of the, or probably at least one of the singular most experienced collectors and knowledgeable people about the value of certain merchandise and things like that we have currently in the Facebook Battletech community.
I don't know about the collecting part. I think that there's some guys out there that have much larger collections with a lot more items. I would say that I probably have a wider variety of stuff and some niche stuff that you're just not going to find other places, in the sense of I'm just trying to collect anything and everything.
Right.
But I know that there's some guys that definitely have a lot more stuff, even just comparatively. I'm working on it. I mean, the big thing to remember for me is I've only been back into Battletech now maybe 6.5 years, and the collecting aspect of it for only about 4. So,
well, you're moving at light speed. I mean, I gotta say, went from flipping stuff for profit to Fortress Games and Minis. I mean, that's a big jump. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been an adventure. It's been good.
All right, right on. So what I really want to get your perspective on, and especially with the breadth of experience that you have after you've returned, versus what happened and what you expected to happen with this auction and the Marauder and the miniatures in general. Because as I understand from one of the previous fellows, he was trying to get in on a Warhammer, and he ended up paying over $400 for it. So I know that's not a normal price. So
yeah, so there were in the lot. That they were individuals, but in that group that gentleman had up for the Battledroids, I mean, he definitely had some rare ones. So, everybody's kind of familiar with the Hornet and the Gladiator and the Cestus and some of those, and the Behemoth and things like that.
Sure.
And the Behemoth went for around where it should. where it's been falling. And there's been a few that show up here and there on eBay quite a bit, or even in the Facebook page, as do some of the others. It was interesting though that even I refer to it as being common, even though they're not necessarily common, but the ones that you see more of, even in blisters, again, the Gladiator, the Falcon, the Cestus, they went for more than what the general going rate is. I mean, I've seen them sit on eBay for months at $60 with no buyers, and they end up selling for like 40, 45.
Wow.
But in this particular round, for whatever reason, even those common types of battle droids and blisters were going for 130. And then you get into, even though we think of the Battle Droid Warhammer and everybody's seen it,
yeah.
In the blister pack, most of them that you're going to see, and most of them that if people are collecting them that they're going to have, are going to be in the orange and black Ral Partha blisters. They're not in the Battle Droids. So the fact that there was the one in the Battle Droids blister, that was going to push the value up just naturally, because honestly, I don't have one in my collection. I know the gentleman that won it, he didn't have one either. And it was an AM auction, and only because the gentleman who was selling them, he said that he messed that one up and forgot to mark it for PM.
Oh, oops.
And so, there probably wasn't even as many people awake or having the opportunity to bid or snipe and all that kind of fun stuff that happens at the end of an eBay auction. So the two, some of the more rare ones like the Griffin and the Shadowhawk, they weren't available in there. I think if those would have been there, we would have seen two more going for well over 500, which are expected for those. Getting into the Marauder, the fact that it was the oval base is what pushed it. The hex base you see everywhere. The oval base is a lot harder to find. I remember just not even 6 months ago, I reached out and asked anybody if anybody had even ever seen one in a blister. I've got some not in a blister, but not even in an orange and black blister. Couldn't find any. And everybody that I reached out to, nobody had ever even seen one. They're like, well, I remember buying it, but I don't remember what blister was in. And so you get this particular one that popped up. My expectation was originally it was probably going to be 550-ish. And then I saw the bidding going on it, and I told some other people that, well, this is going to shoot over 650. Getting into the 1200, what was it? I think it went for 1225. That was even beyond my expectation. I mean, you're talking more than what the going rate for Battle Droids box sets are. And granted, there hasn't been a sealed version of those that come up, but I'm guessing that it's probably similar to a sealed Battle Droids box set, that there's probably less than 10 worldwide right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, for finding them out of the blister, I think in the Battle Droids range, that the Griffin and the Shadowhawk are harder to find than the oval base out of the blister. Now, when you come to in the blister, and I will say, I've also never seen a Griffin or the Shadowhawk Battle Droids in the Battle Droids blister. They're in the orange and black blister.
Yep.
But if one were to show up in a Battle Droids blister, I think you would get into a similar situation of probably close to, at least with the way the market is going right now, maybe $1,000 plus.
That kind of leads into the question that I wanted to ask you, because I think you'd be the one best suited to answer it, is do you think that this sets any kind of precedent, like that we'll see things like this pop up again in the future, and that person will say, well, I know what happened here, so that means I know what I have, and I'm not going to sell it for any less than, this.
Right. I think the next one, if another one comes up on the market in, let's say, the next 4 months, and if it's on eBay, it's going to be listed for a starting price at probably $1,000 or $1,200. I think it sets a precedent. I think what'll end up happening is if all of a sudden several come out, or somebody posts one. Now, this particular one, I think it ran for 8 days. If somebody posts one and it only runs for 3 days or 5 days, it may not get nearly the number of hits that occurred in this particular one. You just won't have as many people watching it.
Right.
And so it's kind of a wave. It can drive the price down. like I said, I think even what you're going to see is for the common battle droids and blisters, of all of a sudden, they're at 40 to 60, 40 to 60, 40 to 60. Now they all shoot to 130. You're going to see a bunch of people, oh, hey, I've got 2 of these. Let me throw one up on eBay for 130 or 120.
Right. Capitalize.
And they're not going to end up selling. And then maybe we'll see some creep back down.
If you think it sets a precedent and you think that stuff like this is going to continue and there's going to be this increased crazy desire to have these pieces, what do you think it is that spurred that on, that made this all of a sudden this big deal, whereas you and I know it didn't used to be that way?
I think right now it's the Battletech Kickstarter, the Battletech video games have thrown Battletech back into the front for a lot of collectors. I think some of those people that may have collected or have stuff from the 80s, like the one gentleman that you interviewed, I know a lot of his stuff is from the late 80s. He bought it originally when it came out, type of stuff.
Right.
But he's been doing it for 35 years, and maybe there's some holes here and there. It wasn't necessarily on the front of your mind. You're into other games, you're doing other stuff. You're not necessarily searching for it as much. Now all of a sudden Battletech's back in the front. You're playing again, you're looking for it. And so how many of the older collectors are coming back around saying, I need to add some stuff to my collection? And I really think right now with Battletech, we are seeing a creep up. I think, and I'm going to be honest, I think what'll happen is come Wave 2, when Wave 2 floods the market on eBay and everybody's getting their Kickstarter orders in and all that kind of stuff, even before they go retail, I think you're going to see a drop again in the old secondary stuff.
Sure.
Because the new stuff is going to be the stuff to get, and it'll creep back down. And then over the long term, it may come back up again. Some. I don't know that it'll go quite as high. I mean, this was a once in. I don't know. I've talked to other guys and we joke and we say everything comes around on eBay.
Sure.
If you miss it once, give it long enough, probably the same thing will come back around again eventually.
Right.
And so even if it's not necessarily the same particular item, everything comes up on eBay at some point. You just got to be patient. So, I didn't get this particular one. It went a lot more than even what I was willing to put into it, and for as bad as I wanted it, and for my particular collection as well, and the completest in all of those, obviously there was 3 or 4 of us that felt like we needed to have that to be complete. But for me right now with the store, that's a lot of money that I could put back into other stuff in the store right now, more so than my personal, in some ways my personal it's kind of gone on hold. I'm still, if I find some rarities, I'm picking them up here and there, but I'm not on the search quite as much as I have been in the past. But things like that you can't pass. And I knew it existed, the Phoenix Hawk, the old unseen Phoenix Hawk, in a Battledroids blister. And so I was able to I had it in orange and black. I knew it existed. The other gentleman that you interviewed actually has one, which is why I knew it existed. So I was able to pick that up for my collection.
Right on.
Sometimes stuff just shows up in the weird places. Like this particular guy, he had his sitting for a long time. Most of my Battledroids collection came from finding a guy that bought a storage unit in Arizona, opened it up, and had all the first runs of the standard Battledroids and all the first run of the 3025 stuff in orange and black blisters, and he didn't know what he had and he wanted to move it. So I helped him out.
Right. So speaking of collections and things like that, I kind of want to get this in here before we wrap it up. So you're putting together a Battletech museum, is that right?
That's my hope. So my plan is, so all of this is kind of a big plan if you think about it. So I have my day job as a principal, and so I do that, but I should be eligible to retire in hopefully 5-6 years, if all things go well. And so when that happens, part of opening Fortress Miniatures is let me get it going now, let me build it up. When I retire, then I can roll it possibly into a physical store and an online store. and then use the physical store to support a Battletech museum. And so part of, yes, it's my personal collection, but the intent is to use my personal collection to, you gotta have a starting point for a museum. I mean, sure. I can't just go out there and say, okay, I'm gonna have a museum, people donate, right, and they're not gonna donate their rarities. You know, nobody's gonna do that. But if I can get it started and up and going and make it, you know, something that's legit and that people could go and visit and see the stuff, my hope is to have an open version of most everything so that you can actually see what's inside, and then to have a sealed version for posterity's sake. Right. I know there's the people that are like, oh, if you got it in a blister, open it. That's not me. I'm a collector in the sense that I want it for posterity, for people to see how it existed, what it looked like, and that type of thing. And so right now, a lot of my collecting is with the goal of it being used as the front starting point for a museum. And so to have a Battletech museum and then have a store that you can go to, and just like my web store, you can buy anything and everything Battletech related, used, new, whatever. And then obviously the store would have other gaming stuff, but the gaming space, tons of Battletech.
Well, it's like I joke with you every now and then. You're like the real life Cranston Snord.
Yeah,
the museum.
I try to be.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, there's some interesting stuff. Like I was able to acquire the first mini that was actually made as the demo from Raul Partha to FASA to show that they could make the Battledroids.
Okay.
There was two of them, and I have one of the two.
Right.
So, and it was a cross between the Firebee and the Stinger.
Yeah, the other fellow was talking about those just a little bit ago, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel you on the collection aspect, not opening the stuff. And I guess people are going to get tired of hearing me repeat it at this point. But I was telling a couple of the other guys, I think that displays like what you're doing or what other people are doing, where they get it and they don't open it, I think that's important. I think that if you have enough in your collection of stuff you would use all the time to satisfy you, then yeah, why wouldn't you want to get this and be like, this is a look at the past. This is how Battletech used to look, you know? And without that, there'd be no record. You know, we wouldn't be able to actually know that because it would all be gone. So I think that's just as important as tearing stuff open and playing with it.
I mean, I'm a firm believer. If you don't have it and you want to run it and you want to play with it, okay, I get it. But you know, if I've got 4 of a miniature, in what day and age am I going to play a game that's big enough that I need to worry about running, you know, the 5th, let's say it's a Battledroid Warhammer or whatever. Do I really need to open that blister to get that 5th one? You know, do you really need to open that 5th one? Because you're never going to run them all on a table. And if you're playing a game that big, you can find something else to substitute. Right.
And you do have the one that's open, so you know what it gets use and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So
yeah, I think posterity is good, especially for that stuff.
And it's hard. Like one of the things, you know, there's like Lance had his memory core and the Helm's memory core, which tries, you know, he tried to kind of like timeline stuff and all that. But there's a ton of stuff out there that FASA was partnering with other people and other companies, and there's no record of that stuff. I can't find anybody that can do a definitive, like, this is every single thing that was ever made for Battletech. And so stuff pops up all the time. There's some crazy stuff out there. And keep your crew in mind. So the first weekend in November, this is off of that, but first weekend in November, I think it's November 6th and 7th or something like that.
Okay.
That's what we're planning on doing, the Alpha Strike tournament. And I'm hoping, it's the 6th and 7th. I mean, potentially we could be hitting 30 to 50 guys playing.
Oh, wow.
So if y'all can make a trip to North Carolina, I've already got the venue. I'm locking down the venue. Once I have the venue locked, that's when I'm going to post it out there. But I'll have the tables, chairs, venue covered at almost no cost.
Oh, right on.
So get some venue insurance. We can run it in my school gym.
Oh, wow.
I've run
I've never played a game there.
I've run Games Workshop fantasy tournaments at my school, like big ones, like 40 people.
Yeah.
So Oh yeah.
I've never played a game inside a high school gym. That would be fabulous.
Oh, see, mine's in elementary school, so the gym's even cooler. And then what we can do is, if we really want to be funny and joke about it, is we can come up with some sort of quiz, and we can have everybody go sit at a tiny little desk and take a quiz. And
I definitely want to be a part of that, and B, I want to film that.
We're trying to get anybody and everybody that can come, and I'm trying to get a couple of special guests, maybe some of our famous folks.
Oh, right on.
Battletech to they don't live too far away in Virginia and other places like that. So if I can get a few of them to maybe come down and play. So
that would be like an almost like a little mini convention, like little mini Comic Con or Pop Culture Con type thing.
Well, and I would make it 2 days too, so like 4 or 5 games on Saturday and then 2 games on Sunday. So that's the plan. I got a giant drop-down screen, so we could be stupid and play the Battletech cartoon up on the screen.
Sure.
or play Mech Warrior music in the background while everybody's get all that kind of stuff together and do all that. We can get some pretty crazy stuff going on.
I'm looking very forward to it, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for providing your expertise. I greatly appreciate you, and I hope you have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
All right, man. Have a great one.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
Crowdfunding is when lots of people give you small amounts of money to help your passion project come to life.